Welcome back, everyone. Bill Nye recently said something bizarre, and Tucker Carlson, who hosts the show normally, took on someone and actually interviewed someone who agrees with Bill Nye. Watch.
Bill Nye, who is called the science guy despite being mostly a television entertainer, recently said there is only one path to fixing the climate and saving the environment, waiting for old people who disagree with his views to die and get out of the way. Joe Rahm is founding editor of Climate Progress. It's a blog run by the Center for American Progress. He says Nye may be onto something. Joe, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So this seems, I mean, look, there are lots of disagreements in science. This seems like a pretty nasty way to frame it. People who disagree with me should just go die?
Well, I think that's not exactly what he said. He just said that climate change deniers tend to be older and it's generational. And in science, it's not unusual for scientists to point out that it is the older generation of scientists who are sort of stuck in a paradigm, and they're not going to change their views.
What is unusual is for scientists to use political language, loaded political language like denier, to frame the conversation in a way that pushes their views without having to prove that their views are right. That's not really a scientific way of approaching the conversation, is it? Likening people who disagree with you to Holocaust deniers?
Well, I don't think he's likening them to Holocaust.
Well, but that word is designed to delegitimize people who disagree with you. And in real science, what you do is you marshal your data and you present them in an open forum against the other guy's data and may the best data win.
Right, but then what happens after that? We've been doing that for 25 years. You know, the United Nations, all the countries of the world asked all the leading scientists to review the science every 5 years and put out a report. And that report, by the way, was then reviewed line by every world government. So this is kind of the least common denominator.
No, but that's not true, because there are many questions up in the air, like what causes global warming.
That's not a big question anymore.
It may not be a big question. Most people may agree with one interpretation of it. I'm not contesting it. I'm merely saying that's only but one of many. Is it real? How profound is it? What causes it? Can you reverse it? I mean, it's presumably valid to have, you know, a place on the spectrum on any of those questions without being a denier, without being immoral, without being stupid, without being deserving of death. So, like, well, it's not all or nothing.
Can I ask you a question?
You may.
You don't bring on the air anymore people who say cigarette smoking isn't harmful.
But that's not equivalent.
It is.
And I would know it's actually not. Because there is an open debate about how exactly we can reverse this, if we can at all.
No,
there is not an open
debate on it.
Yes, there is. There's not a 97% consensus that this is the only way that, for example, the Paris Accord is the only way to reverse global warming. That's just not true. There are all kinds of opinions. This is a political question, and you're...
Well, now you're mixing up.
No, I'm not mixing up.
The politics, the solution
you are doing
with the science.
No, you are doing
97% of scientists agree that humans, through the pollution, burning of fossil fuels and cutting down trees, are the primary cause of global warming.
But okay, my point is only, and I'm not contesting that, though...
So you accept that?
I'm not contesting that for the purposes of this conversation. I'm merely saying
you contest it?
That is one. Look, here's what I contest. I contest the idea that science is ever settled. The nature of science is that you bring to bear to what you think you know an endless series of questions. You are endlessly skeptical. When you stop being skeptical, you are not engaging in science. You're doing what you are doing, which is advancing a political agenda. And to call that science
if I get on an airplane,
is wrong.
Am I advancing a political agenda?
When you get on an airplane and say, we know why this airplane crashed without investigating it, without constantly asking questions against what we think we know,
but
then you're
pretty settled that airplanes are safe to fly on. It doesn't mean that they never crash. It just means we know they're very safe. We put 12 men on the moon and got them back. So science does have a good way of figuring out what works and what doesn't.
I agree with that when we are endlessly skeptical. When we test what we think we know against the available data. And that's what makes me nervous about your approach and about the approach of Bill Nye, the fake science guy, is he's very offended that this 3% still exists, and maybe they should go die. And my feeling is, well, wait a second. Why is that such a threat to him or you that people might have a different view? Why do you feel so angry that you would call them names like denier or wish for their death? Why is that?
Well, I don't think he wishes for their death.
Well, he said he did. He said they're going to die and everything will be better.
In Charles Darwin's book, Origin of the Species, he says He knows that evolution is true. He knows he's not going to persuade the existing bunch of naturalists and scientists because they've lived their whole career with another paradigm, and he is looking forward to the next generation who will look at this objectively. Now, you're not looking at this objectively.
Well, actually, I think I am more than you. Maybe because I know less than you on this subject. I know religious behavior when I see it. And I think that anybody who is threatened by questions is not engaging in science, he's engaging in theology.
But it seems to me you're threatened by us actually solving the problem.
Not in the slightest.
Well, you're opposed you said the Paris Agreement is somehow no good. That's the solution that every single country in the world, 190 nations, unanimously agree.
No.
Only President Trump pulled out of it.
Now you're revealing you're not a scientist, you're a political person, because I'm asking sincere...
I'm a scientist by training.
You're not behaving like one. I'm asking a sincere question about the Paris Agreement. Hold on, but about the Paris Agreement. Why is it okay? This is a question I asked and was denounced as a denier for doing so by the religious nuts running this crusade. Why is it okay for the biggest polluters in the world to keep polluting for many years to come? Why do we call that progress? And they're like, oh, you don't believe in global warming? I'm not saying that.
But they're
I'm asking a sincere question. Actually, they are.
Actually, China is not. China has probably leveled off CO2 emissions.
Under the terms of the agreement, and I think you're factually wrong on this. Under the terms of the agreement, China does not have to reduce its carbon emissions immediately. Am I misstating that? I mean,
you are correct. But
okay, I am right. Okay.
They have, but you're wrong in that they already have plateaued their CO2 emissions. To be clear,
that may or may not be true, but
without interrupting,
the agreement.
Could I have 30 seconds?
Yeah, of course.
To answer? I mean, first of all, people can read the answers to every single one of these questions in my book, Climate Change, What Everyone Needs to Know, which is a primer that I did for Oxford University Press after reading the scientific literature and talking to all the experts. If they don't agree with you,
should they die? Are they deniers? Or are they just people with a different view?
Again, not what I said.
Okay.
What I said is that here's what we know, Tucker, and it seems to me you're the one who is denying the scientific consensus.
I'm not denying the scientific consensus.
Humans are the principal cause of global warming. Okay. Now, is that true or not? Are you conceding that, or are you just conceding that for the purpose of talking to me?
The question at this point is,
so
what do you do about the apparent rise in global temperatures?
You could curtail
there are many possible
cause.
Answers to that question.
There are not.
Oh, they're not.
No.
Oh, okay, so anyone who asked that, look, I'm just saying you're not conducting science. You work for a political organization. These are political questions that ought to be solved through political means, and you're trying to short-circuit that by saying, we know the answer, shut up and obey, or else you're a denier.
I never said any of that. All of the, you never get 190 nations of the world to agree on anything. So the fact that they all got together and unanimously said, we have to leave most fossil fuels in the ground, must tell you something, because it's never happened before.
Really? Because it happened in the First World War, when virtually every population center in the world agreed it was a good idea to go to war. And it wasn't. So just because a huge group of people agree on something, then it must be right? Like, I disagree with your premise. Everyone agreed that the Earth was flat.
And then science came along and told them it wasn't.
Then let it come along.
It did come along. We asked the scientists to tell us what to do, much as we asked the doctors, is it safe to smoke? The answer is no. Is it safe to keep? It's exactly the same. And
it's so revealing. This conversation's so revealing, and I'm glad we had it. It really is.
I hope we can have some more.
I hope so, too. Mr. Trump, thank you for joining us.
Please read my book, and you will then be informed, and you won't have to ask so
And if I'm not, I should go die.
No,
thank you. No, immediately go die. Thank you.
Sure not.